What's up, everybody? I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the new 2021 Ford F-150. So, completely new generation here for the F-150. Very similar to the old generation in many ways, but they did make a lot of nice improvements to this interior. Unfortunately, a lot of those improvements are only on the higher trims, and this is an XLT trim, so this is the second from the lowest trim for the F-150. Now, within each trim, they also have different grades. It's very confusing with all the options and configurations for the F-150 here, because they sell so many of these that they can really customize this to exactly what they want. So this one doesn't have a lot of features to it. So a lot of the cool stuff, like for example, these seats fold flat in higher trims. This one does not do that. This also has the smaller screen. Now this is a 301A package, so this one does have this, like a mid-grade of that XLT. So you do get some little upgrades here, but unfortunately I'm not able to show you a lot of the awesome new stuff in the F-150. You'll have to go watch other reviews for all those features and stuff. But you know, if you're someone who wants an affordable version of the new F-150, this is a really great look at what that is going to look like. And so now this one has a bunch of strange options on it, so this one still ends up being about $58,000, which is just insane. You could have almost a King Ranch for this kind of money. So this one was very strange with its configuration. So you'll want to go on Ford's configurator to actually figure out what it would cost you and what trim level makes sense for you and the features that you want. But anyway, I think that they made some nice changes here. It's great now. This infotainment system is improved, even though it's not any larger on these versions of the F-150. But you do have a touchscreen as standard now. Previously, on the previous generation F-150, you didn't even get a touchscreen as standard, so that is a nice little upgrade. So they did make some nice improvements. Also, some of the materials here around the door panels, the dash, all that is nicer than it was before. A little bit more softness to it and stuff. So they made some improvements for sure.
However, I do feel like there's a lot of different textures. It's just kind of strange because we have this like rubberized stuff, we have plastic, we have special plastic, this kind of plastic. So I don't know, there's just like a lot to take in, a lot to look at. It's very interesting, but I don't know if it's my style. Yeah, it is. And there's even like this silver plastic here. So yeah, you're right, there are a myriad of plastics. Yeah, a ton of textiles. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so that is interesting. And that is something that's a little more cohesive on the higher trims, where a lot of the stuff will be actual wood and metal and leather. That makes it a little more consistent, whereas with this it's like, well, let's like make some stuff nicer and give it texture so that it's not super cheap feeling and stuff. And it works. You know, I think some of the textures and stuff do make it more interesting, but yeah, this still just feels pretty cheap, you know. I mean, and especially given this one's price tag, you know, this does not feel anything close to a $58,000 truck with this interior. And so one of the other things, moving on to the seats here in the XLT versions, you still get cloth seats. You can go up to leather if you go for lariat trims and stuff, but you have cloth seats here in the XLT. They're actually a pretty comfortable cloth. Now this is the sport cloth. There's even multiple cloth seats, and this is the sport trim of that cloth, and they're super soft and very comfortable though. I actually really love these seats, and if you're someone who, you know, doesn't mind cloth seats, these seats are fantastic. And obviously, you know, support and stuff is pretty typical truck stuff. You know, bolstering's pretty non-existent and stuff, but you know, for truck seats they totally work, and like I said, comfort's the main thing, and they're really good for that.
Yeah, and I also think that they're really comfortable. One thing though with the passenger is that you don't get any height adjustments. So once again, I always feel like I'm sitting up a little bit too high. We are in a truck, so I will obviously sit up a little bit higher anyways, and because we're in a truck, the roof line is so high anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, and they're also all manual controls. However, you do have a manual control for your lumbar support. So if you have the lumbar support, I don't know why they wouldn't have given you height adjustment as well, but there you go.
Yeah, and I mean, height adjustment isn't an expensive thing. It's just one extra manual lever they could have included to give you that customization, because in this truck it's not as big of a deal. Like you said, the roof is higher, but this one also doesn't have a moonroof, so that's why this roof is even a little bit higher than normal. If you had a moonroof, this would come down a little bit lower and make that, you know, a little bit tighter. Now, I believe you do get height adjustment possibly in the higher trims of the F-150 with their power seats, and even in an XLT trim, you can go up to a 302A package, and that will give you a power passenger seat. It doesn't have a lot of adjustability, I think, in that XLT trim, but at least you would have power adjustments, and you'd have some additional adjustments here for the driver's seat too. But yeah, it's not an expensive thing. I wish they would add.
Right.
But yeah, and also these seats, by the way, in the XLT are not heated or anything. If you do go up to that 302A, which, by the way, I would implore you to spend the extra. It's like $3,500 extra to go for the 302A, because it gives you so many things that I think make sense in anything. If you're buying any truck and you're spending over $40,000 for all these F-150s, they're features you should have as standard, and unfortunately Ford doesn't give them to you as standard. But like 302A gives you a keyless actual proximity key, so you have push button start, so you don't have to dig in your pocket for a key every time like I am having to do here in this. You also get heated seats in those. You get just basic other things that you would expect in a truck. And so you know, I would highly recommend going for that package. But if you want to save some money, you don't care about, you know, having some of those dated features, then, you know, that's totally fine. But yeah, no heated seats or anything here. And moving on to the steering wheel, that is one thing with this 301A package. You do get a leather steering wheel, a base XLT. It's not even leather wrapped. This is a nice wheel though, you know, nothing too fancy, just plastic buttons here on it. You have a little bit of a metal trim here and more of this textured plastic down here. But it's a great steering wheel, just a few buttons, very easy to understand, and no complaints with that. The gauges here in this 301A package, again, are upgraded. That is one of the things you get with this mid-level package, is that it upgrades you from a tiny little screen in the middle there to this 8-inch driver display that they have. And it's nice, but again, if you just go up to the very next trim and you go for a Lariat, you do get fully digital gauges, which are really cool looking. I think it's like a 12-inch display, very sweet digital gauges, and so that's one feature we're missing out on here. I can't really show you too much of those, but these gauges are really nice still. You know, get the job done just fine. And that digital portion in the middle is, you know, pretty large and high resolution. I like how all the, you know, gauges are there at the top are digital, and you know, lots of things you can still scroll through here and customize with your My View and all that. It will also reflect whenever you do drive mode changes. It'll show you all those different views and stuff, which is fine, except it is pretty slow with the transitions for that, so it takes a while before it actually switches over. Anyway, coming over to the center of the dashboard here. So yes, this screen does look really small in this huge center stack, and that's partially just because this is built for a massive screen. You can get those nice 12-inch displays in the higher trims of the F-150, and actually you can even get it in an XLT. If you, again, just go up to that 302A package, that gives you that big screen. It also gives you LED headlights. Like I said, lots of good things for that $3,500 over this one that I would strongly suggest. But this 8-inch screen is still a nice improvement. It's running the new Sync 4 infotainment system that Ford has been debuting here on the 2021 models, and it's a nice improvement over the old Sync 3, mainly because it has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is something that like my Mustang Bullet, which is a 2019, for example, does not have. And they've also updated the graphics and the colors and stuff, so it's a little different looking, and it's actually pretty quick and responsive. There have been a few times where it was a little glitchy, especially with CarPlay, where I would hit play and no sound would come out, or it would take it a few seconds and then start. It's not perfect. Wireless CarPlay is kind of glitchy in a lot of other manufacturers' vehicles as well, so this isn't a problem exclusive to Ford, but just note that, you know, it's going to be maybe a little glitchy every once in a while with this. Maybe with some software updates it'll get better over time, but that's the only caveat there. Otherwise, it's really great. Everything is really quick to scroll through there. I really like this features tab too, where you can pull up stuff really quickly and control things like your Pro Power onboard generator, which this one has, which I'll get to more here in a second, and all your driver assistance tech and stuff you can dial in there with that, which is great that it will remember all those settings in between key cycles. So if you don't want to have, you know, all the assistance stuff, you can turn off individual things, and so that's where you do all that. Beneath the screen, you'll have your volume and tune knobs, which is great that you have both of those. And I also like that the tune knob isn't too far away, so for the driver it's not too far of a reach. Obviously you have the on-screen controls for, you know, swapping radio stations and stuff too if you want, but these also feel a little bit nicer than they did in previous generations of the F-150. It's not actual metal. It looks like metal, but it's just plastic, but still a little bit of a nicer look for sure. And then you have your climate controls as you continue down here. They also have more of these knobs that you know, look nicer than they actually feel. You know, it's all plastic stuff, but it's okay. It's still nice to have nonetheless. And just a few buttons there, and this one does have dual zone climate control. That is one of the things you get with the 301A package here, and I like the little display within the knobs there. It's always a nice use of space,
and it's definitely passenger friendly, so that's really good.
Yeah, and a large truck like this, it is really nice to have that stuff pushed to the corners, because we are further apart. So if this were all driver focused, like everyone's obsessed with driver focused stuff and all these interiors these days, I'm glad that with the truck they're leaving all your stuff on your side so you can control it easier. But yeah, and then moving on to storage spaces here in the new F-150, it's really good. You know, all trucks are very good with their storage spaces. You know, lots of nooks and crannies to, you know, put things. And so first off, in the doors, I mean, you have, I don't know, it's probably like almost a 3-foot long pocket here. It's massive, multiple different cutouts there. You have a bottle holder part and all kinds of extra stuff there. Great to have that. There's also this second tier up here where you have an additional space to put a smartphone or something like that in there if you'd like. So I mean, already tons of space in the doors. Coming over to the center here, you also have these huge cutouts here by the transmission tunnel area and this center bin, and that's also very large and could fit your phone as well if you want. And then you also have this huge center bin in the front here, which has this interesting little phone holder. I think that would be, you know, an area where you'd have a wireless charging pad in higher trims, but again, this one does not have that. You also have a USB jack and USB-C jack in that area, but I mean, a really deep cubby there. In this one, also, because this is a bit of an oddball with this XLT trim, you also don't have any kind of console shifter. In all the other versions of the F-150 that are nicer, you have a shifter here, and you don't have this column shifter. And so with those versions of the F-150, that takes up this bin, and it's really cool because that shifter actually folds down to make room for this workstation table, which I'll show in a second. But so here, if you get an XLT, you don't have that, you get an extra cubby as a bonus. So that's you know, nice extra space, and it's really large. Fits, you know, sunglass cases, things like that. And then you have another little slot here for the key or something, and your 2 cup holders. But then you have the center armrest, which is pretty softly padded. It's not one of the plushest out there. You open this up and it's huge, very, very deep. You have this little removable tray here for coins and stuff. And I mean, a massive space down there, which also has a USB jack and a USB-C jack. So great to have those. You also have these little ridges here so you can have a hanging file folder system in here. And so that's kind of nice if you're someone who does work out of your truck and, you know, wants to store stuff in there. You can do that very, very well. But one cool thing that you do get here in this XLT, and this is, I think, an extra option, but it's a very cheap option to get, is this folding workstation. So you can flip this forward, and then you have this flat space for eating or whatever. They also, of course, you know, a lot of people use this for like their laptop or something. If you're on a work site and you're going to be typing on a laptop, that is really great to have. But I think this is a really cool inclusion, and just one of the ways that these Ford engineers are really creative with coming up with new solutions for how people actually use these trucks. And something like this you don't get in any of the competitors, and I'm sure many of them will copy this pretty quickly, but this is a pretty ingenious thing and one of the really cool additions to these new F-150s. So great to have that. Also, right up top here, you have this rubberized area, which is a nice deep little cubby as well for some extra space there. I mean, so lots of areas just here on the driver's side.
Yeah, and plus with the passenger side, if you press this little button, you have this cubby right here on the dash, which is really nice and big, and you can fit your phone, a wallet, something like that, definitely easily in there, and hide it away so nobody can see.
Yeah, so lots of great little storage spaces. Also, lots of good hookups here. In addition to all those USB jacks, you also have a traditional power outlet and an AC 120 volt plug there. And so that is part of this Pro Power onboard generator. There's also 2 more outlets in the truck bed here of the F-150. And so this truck is equipped with a 2 kilowatt option. So it's an inverter that then runs the engine to power those electric outlets. And unlike other vehicles that might have these plugs, they usually put out about 400 watts of power, so you can only power so many kinds of devices. These ones actually all combined with all the different power outlets in this truck, you can actually power up to 2,000 watts of power output with this. And so this is the only onboard generator you can get with the normal gas engine. So this, you can't get it on the base V6, but this one has the upgraded 5-liter V8, so it's on that, the 2.7 EcoBoost and the 3.5 EcoBoost. If you go for the hybrid versions of the F-150, which are new for 2021, then you can step up to 2 higher output generators that are really crazy, especially the full-blown one, I think, is like 7.2 kilowatts of power that that'll put out, which is just crazy. But so if you're someone who uses that kind of stuff, you know, that's one huge selling point here of the F-150, which again, you don't get in any of the competitors. And so that's, you know, really cool to have. And, but yeah, even in this, you know, non-hybrid version, you still have, you know, that upgraded inverter here, which is an option, but it's nice that you can get that here on these still. And if you're curious where that inverter is, you can actually hear a little quiet humming under the back seat there. And that does take this spot of where you would have normally under seat storage in these F-150s. And that is an option that you get with this 301A package, but then you lose that storage when you go for the Pro Power inverter here. But moving on to the back seat here in the F-150, it is a ton of space. I mean, all of these crew cab trucks these days are massive and just have boatloads of space. And this one is no different. I don't think they really changed the dimensions much here for this new F-150, but it is still a massive amount of space. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I easily have, I think, over a foot of legroom to spare. I don't think you can be a human being and not fit in the back of this back seat. I mean, it's just like huge, tons of, you know, headroom and everything as well. It's just massive, and so I don't think anyone's going to be cramped back there. It is just great. And so those seats do also flip up if you don't need those seats, and then you have a really large floor that's totally flat, by the way, so you can load in, you know, large bins or whatever you want in there still. And they have lots of their own amenities as well, so when they look forward, they'll see they have 2 cup holders here right up top, plus a little notch for a phone or something. They also have their own dedicated air vents, and you'll see all the power sources that they have access to there as well. So you'll see they have a regular power outlet. They also have another 120 volt plug back there, and then they also have another USB jack and another USB-C jack. And then there's, you know, bins galore still, you know, and there's doors. You have huge pockets once again, and then you have a second tier again in the middle, so they have, you know, plenty of places to put things back there. And so I mean, all kinds of space. And of course there are different lengths for these cabs. So this is the SuperCrew version. There's also a smaller backseat version, as well as the 2-door version. You can still get on the base XL and this XLT trim. You can still get a 2-door version. But yeah, so really a good amount of backseat space. And then the truck bed here in the F-150 is also fantastic. So this is the 6.5 foot bed. That's the middle of the pack one. There's also the 5.5 foot bed, which is the smaller one you get on the higher trims. And there's also an 8 foot bed you can get on some configurations as well. So the 6.5 foot bed, really useful, of course. You have that extra length over the standard 5.5 foot. And this one also has the spray and bed liner, which is really nice to have. And like I said, you get that Pro Power onboard generator with those plugs in the back there and a little switch to turn them on. And those plugs, by the way, do operate even when you're driving. So if you're needing to charge your tools as you're driving back and forth from work sites and stuff, you can run this while you're driving and you keep all that stuff charging in the back there, which is also a very cool touch. Now, one thing here with this XLT trim is the tailgate is not damped. So that tailgate, even though it's aluminum, so it's a little bit lighter, it still has some heft to it and will drop really quickly. So keep that in mind. If you don't have one of the nicer versions of the F-150, you'll still have to be careful with that. And that tailgate also does have a few cool features built into it, where it has a built-in step that pops out, and you can even pull out a railing that pops up, and then you can, you know, help pull yourself into that truck bed there if you would like some extra assistance. And it's a little more involved than the simpler solution which Chevy has, where they just have steps cut out into the actual rear bumper, so you just hop up, and it's way easier to get into the truck beds of the Chevys for that reason. But the Ram also has kind of a more cumbersome step and stuff, so you know, this is a little bit of an extra step if you're not someone who's super athletic and can't just hurtle over into that bed. But it is you know, really nice step and great to have that. And also there's various tie downs and things in that bed there, and you can also get lighting. Like this one does have the optional LED lighting, so you can light up that truck bed and stuff. So great to have all that stuff back there, and so a really, you know, usable truck bed, of course. But yeah, so that's about it as far as all our thoughts on the interior. We'll be having a driving review I'll be posting as well. You can go watch that. I'll link it above if you want to hear what this truck's like to drive. This one does have the 5-liter V8, which is awesome to get that, and it's awesome they offer it even in these lower trims like this XLT. And so yeah, go watch that video if you're curious to hear all our thoughts on how it drives. But overall, you know, I think that really the bottom line is you have to configure these smartly, because this one doesn't make any sense at $58,000. So you have to make sure that you just, you know, are very careful with what options you select. And if you're shopping on a dealer lot for pre-built configurations, just know that XLTs usually aren't in the 50s. You know, they should not be this expensive. Like I said, you can get a really nice Lariat for high 40s. You can get almost a King Ranch for, you know, these you know, mid to high $50,000 range. So just be careful with the options, and then I think this F-150 makes a lot of sense. But again, I still think the Ram interior feels a little more plush, even in its lower trims. But I think the new F-150 here really makes some nice updates to compete very well with that new Ram. But yes, that's all of our thoughts. Let us know your thoughts on the new F-150 here in the comments below. Huge thanks to Ford for providing us here with this F-150 to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.